Welcome back to the deep dive. If you've ever scrolled through the headlines and just thought the world is simultaneously on fire with high-stakes political drama, economic warfare, and just bizarre celebrity accidents, well,
You'd be right.
you would be absolutely right. The sources we've got in front of us from the last 24 hours really confirm that suspicion. It's a snapshot of some serious global turbulence.
It really is a study in extremes. Our mission today is to kind of act as your guides through this to help you connect the dots between these completely separate global flashpoints.
And we're going everywhere.
We are. We're starting with this really charged controversy of the U.S. Justice Department, then jumping straight into major geopolitical instability. We're talking claims of political assassination in South Asia.
Oh.
And then we'll land on these critical market-moving policy shifts happening in India. We're going to focus on the implications, the unexpected consequences that are popping up in the news.
All right, let's unpack this. We're diving into a real mix of headline controversy, some major geopolitical maneuvering, and these rapid-fire policy changes that remind you that, well, sometimes the biggest stories are hiding in the quiet stuff.
And we're going to begin with some highly sensitive domestic political turbulence in the U.S., specifically around the publicly released investigative files concerning Jeffrey Epstein.
This first story really sets the tone for, I guess, institutional chaos. It's like the case of the disappearing photo. It centers on the Justice Department briefly removing and then, get this, restoring an image. Twice. An image featuring President Donald Trump from this public database of really sensitive files. And, the whole sequence just caused an immediate political firestorm.
The detail here really matters because it shows you how sensitive this idea of public information control is.
Yeah.
At least 13 photos were taken down at first with no explanation.
Right.
And the Department of Justice, the DOJ, they tried to manage the fallout. They stressed that the removal was all about protecting victim privacy.
That was the official line.
That was the official line. They issued this very firm statement insisting it had, quote, nothing to do with the president himself. But the whole thing, the removal, the public anger, and then putting it back up, it just created this real, palpable mistrust.
And that institutional drama wasn't happening in a vacuum. At the same time, our sources are noting that Trump announced this major diplomatic shakeup. He recalled nearly 30 career diplomats.
From their ambassadorial positions.
Yeah, all at once.
Excellent.
And then when you pull back that many experienced people, it feels less like a routine rotation and more like, a deliberate political statement.
That's the definition of political volatility, isn't it? You have this instability over how sensitive evidence is handled at home, and then you couple that with a massive diplomatic upheaval abroad.
It makes everything feel suspect.
It does. Yeah. It creates an environment where every single high-level communication or lack of one becomes immediately suspect to global partners and to you, the observer.
And speaking of unexpected communications that add to the volatility, this is where things get just plain bizarre.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
American rapper Nicki Minaj was speaking at a Turning Point USA event, and in a truly remarkable verbal slip, she accidentally called Vice President J.D. Vance an assassin.
Wait, she actually called a sitting vice president an assassin on stage?
That's exactly what the sources report, and apparently she realized the second it came out of her mouth, the accounts say she just trailed off, lowered the mic, and covered her mouth. Just this visible moment of, oh no, what did I just say?
Yeah. You couldn't write that. It's almost too absurd.
It is.
But if you connect that verbal bomb to the bigger political picture, it just underscores the intense, almost surreal environment everyone's operating in.
Totally.
Whether it's the Justice Department flip-flopping on evidence or a major celebrity accidentally labeling a politician a killer. These moments, from the serious to the ridiculous, they all feed into this pervasive sense of political tension for you.
Okay, so from domestic photo drama and accidental accusations, let's pivot. This volatility isn't just an internal U.S. thing. Let's talk about some high-stakes global flashpoints, starting on the high seas.
We're looking at the U.S. pursuit of a third oil tanker near Venezuela. And this is happening just days after President Trump ordered this comprehensive blockade of sanctioned oil tankers.
So this is direct economic pressure.
Absolutely. Applied right on the water.
And Venezuela's reaction was not subtle.
Not at all. Their representatives at the UN just ripped into Trump. They called the blockade a hideous violation of civilization. The stakes here are incredibly high. The U.S. is trying to choke Venezuela's main source of revenue.
And Venezuela is basically framing it as an act of war.
Exactly, using the most aggressive diplomatic language possible. Now, moving eastward, we shift to the critical situation in Bangladesh, which is just marked by profound instability and violence.
Right, and former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina refuses to even return to the country. Her reasoning is just a complete indictment of the current government.
It is. She stated very clearly that the legal actions against her are a form of political assassination. She insists she won't come back until there's a legitimate government and a truly independent judiciary.
When a former head of state uses a phrase like political assassination to describe legal proceedings,
It tells you everything. It signals that the entire system of governance has just lost legitimacy in the eyes of a major political faction. She's also criticizing the interim administration for instability and rising religious extremism.
and this internal crisis is having real bloody consequences. The UN has been forced to step in and urge for calm after these major protests and a travel ban, all sparked by the killing of a youth leader, Sharif Osman Hadi.
It shows how deep the polarization runs. It's moving from rhetoric to actual bloodshed. And this internal chaos is causing friction with its neighbors, too.
How so?
Well, Bangladesh rejected concerns raised by India about minority safety. They called the recent lynching of a Hindu man an isolated case.
Which just sounds like an attempt to downplay a really sensitive issue.
Exactly. It shows you how fragile that diplomatic relationship is right now, especially when you're dealing with communal tensions.
Okay, let's pull back from the geopolitical strife for a moment and focus on policy and markets. We're pivoting to India, where these huge silent policy shifts are happening, often overshadowed by all the drama we just talked about.
Right, and first up is some market-moving news from the Reserve Bank of India. The RBI is signaling more monetary easing. Reports suggest they might cut the repo rate by another 25 basis points in February.
And for you listening, what does that actually mean, a repo rate cut, a basis point?
So a basis point is just 1/100th of a percent. A 25 basis point cut means the RBI is lowering the rate at which banks borrow money from it. It's a key signal.
It makes borrowing cheaper.
It makes borrowing cheaper for everyone down the line, for businesses, for consumers. The signal is that the central bank is focused on stimulating growth. And they're even hinting at more cuts in early 2026 if inflation stays under control.
And that economic signal happened at the same time as two massive new laws, which show how governance is being redefined, and in one case, pretty controversially.
The first one is the Shanti Bill. It received the president's assent, and its significance is, well, it's enormous.
Why is that?
It officially opens India's civil nuclear power sector to private companies. For decades, this has been a sector controlled almost exclusively by the state. This is a huge strategic pivot.
So bringing in private money to boost India's energy capacity.
Exactly. It's likely tied to their long-term climate goals.
Yeah.
But right after that, we have this fierce controversy over a second new law, the VBG-Ramji bill.
And this one caused an immediate backlash.
A scathing one from Sonia Gandhi. She slammed the government, accusing them of systematically dismantling the big rural jobs program, MG&RGA.
Okay, so MG&RGA, that was the one that guaranteed 100 days of work for rural households, right?
It was a guarantee, a legal right to work. And that's the heart of the political fight. Gandhi argues that this new bill replaces that guarantee, which is a foundational social safety net for millions, with a discretionary scheme.
So it's no longer a right, it's up to the government's discretion.
Precisely. She's warning that it threatens livelihoods and demolishes that right to work. It's a classic high-stakes battle over social welfare versus government discretion.
And meanwhile, the political coalition behind these laws seems to be just tightening its grip.
No question. The Mahayuti, the BJP-led coalition, just swept the local body polls in Maharashtra. They won 207 seats, with the BJP becoming the single largest party.
That's a massive win at the local level.
It is, and it signals that the current ideological stance is really resonating. To add to that, the RSS chief, Mohan Bhagwat, publicly emphasized that India remains a Hindu nation as long as people celebrate its cultural heritage. He even said the organization doesn't need parliament's approval for that.
A very self-assured statement.
A powerful one, especially coming right after such a big electoral victory.
Okay, let's wrap up by looking at some immediate crises and a few really odd discoveries that sort of highlight these underlying vulnerabilities. First, the environmental situation in North India it's an emergency.
Yeah, dense fog and reports of severe air quality index, or AQI, across Delhi, Punjab, Haryana, UP. It's widespread. And this isn't just a health issue, it's an operational paralysis.
Flights are being disrupted.
Major disruptions at IGI Airport. This annual crisis is now an immediate emergency that just halts commerce and movement.
And speaking of operational emergencies, this next detail is a truly urgent but quiet national crisis. India's maritime surveillance capabilities are reportedly down to 1980s levels.
This is a huge defense vulnerability. The reason is that the Advanced Light Helicopter, the ALH Dhruv fleet, is completely grounded.
And these are the specialized helicopters for coastal patrol?
Yes, for coastal patrol, anti-piracy, just general maritime awareness. Having that whole fleet grounded means the Navy is essentially operating blind in huge swaths of its strategic waters, and there's still no clear timeline for getting them back in the air.
And to bring this full circle back to the strange nature of things, we end with this bizarre discovery. A 6-year-old boy in Jammu and Kashmir found a suspicious Chinese-made weapon telescope
Near a garbage dump.
near a garbage dump.
A child finds military-grade hardware next to the trash. It's an unbelievable juxtaposition of innocence and high-level security failure. The incident sparked an immediate security alert. But that image, the silent failure of the grounded fleet versus this accidental, very visible discovery by a kid, it just captures the bizarre security environment we're in.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've seen a Justice Department scrambling to manage public documents. We watched a political collapse in Bangladesh with claims of political assassination. And we saw these huge controversial policy shifts in India.
The sheer volume and intensity of it all underscores a fundamental truth. Local policy decisions, like opening up the nuclear sector or changing rural employment, are happening at the exact same time as these huge global standoffs like the U.S. blockade near Venezuela. The world, through today's sources, is in constant, dynamic, and often bizarre flux.
And here's where it gets really interesting for you to think about. We've seen everyone, politicians, celebrities, even children, get swept up in events much larger than themselves, from a rap star's accidental insult to a boy finding a weapon telescope. You have to consider how often the sensational, absurd headlines mask the massive, quiet policy shifts happening in the background. Things like the grounding of entire surveillance fleet or the quiet restructuring of employment guarantees for millions of people. What are the important, slower-moving crises that we're all collectively missing while we track the latest political drama? That's something for you to mull on today.